fact, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. That's twitch.tv if you're wanting to check out in that range here. Some of these may sound a little bit out of place here, but the entire point that we always come down to with pretty much everything we do, with slim to any exceptions that I can think of off the top of my head, is having that conversation, bringing in people to talk about the things that are important to us and that affect us here in the borderland. So being out in all those ways is consider them backups, consider them more interactive in certain ways. But of course, we love those that are still tuning in over radio frequency, as one of our listeners put it recently, because that is still very much ingrained in our DNA here in doing live local talk radio and continuing our mission to bring it back here in the borderland. So that's what we're going to keep doing, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, because we definitely need that here in the area, even if sometimes online it gets a little interesting as John Brazelton is tuning in and giving us a note there. Let me see if I can make an adjustment there. See if that works out a little bit better for you. But, I mean, we try to be responsive to, well, all the things that come out of all of this. So, I mean, I also like the interaction that happens with this. We will have those phone lines open a little bit later in the program, as we usually do. But, of course, you can leave your comments during the show. That's one of the better ways social media works as well here. So let us know if that's any better for you. A lot of things top of mind here. We'll see what we can cram into this show, because there's almost too much to get to. Of course, we have now the tally out of the first week of legalized marijuana recreational sales in the Land of Enchantment. Estimates vary depending on how you're exactly measuring it, but in the millions is undoubtable, though specific city level it's not quite available yet. So that's one of the things on mind here, but also some downtown developments. One thing that we've been hinting and just haven't quite gotten to just yet, because we keep having too much to talk about here. Got the Soto Hotel, but then also just the focus on downtown in, some different ways than it usually has been, with that convention that is coming to town in 2024. We've been hinting at this for, a minute now. We just haven't quite got fully to do that. So we'll finally address that here today. But with the DeSoto being renovated, that was kind of already the plan, to my understanding. And now, if that actually, will move forward, what does that actually mean for downtown? And the changes and shifts we're seeing as more events are coming here, more capacity is being seen, all of that kind of stuff here, even as we're looking at, some other issues still crashing through us. It's not all doom and gloom, but you can still see some from here as we're looking at border policies changing. Title 42 back in focus again, start of this week, as there is more formulation of the plan to see its removal for internally sound reasons. Like the reasons they're giving, sure, makes sense in its own way, but again, the law and doctrine of unintended consequences beyond alive and well when we think about this. Because if we're just looking at pandemic related issues, sure, Title 42 to remove it might make sense, assuming that there was another policy ready to go or already in place, but we'll get into that here as well. So just a couple of, again, top of mind items here. Again, we are looking at the renovation of the DeSoto Hotel. So some reporting coming on both from our news partners at KFOX 14, but also citing further reporting going on by the El Paso Times that the DeSoto is going to be renovated, because it's still going to be possible for that to happen. You may have recalled the images, and the people went a little wild online while seeing things in the flames here, which I think says more about them than anything. But the DeSoto Hotel, of course, not quite good. I mean, roof down in a lot of areas, some again, look from our news partners or pretty much anyone who did that kind of coverage, and you'll see some pretty amazing footage that happened at the time. And it looks like, surprisingly enough, it's going to be able to be saved here. I mean, there was, of course, the unresolved investigation that came out of it, but on the end of last month, Robert Jones says they narrowed it down. Investigator with a lieutenant with El Paso Fire Department says they narrowed it down to there could be an electrical fault or malfunction or the act of a person or persons. So kind of narrowed down to, the list was probably a little bit shorter on what then it couldn't be than what it could, but still good. I mean, just the fact that it's now been investigation closed and greenlit, that's what it was already kind of unoccupied for, is what came to my attention here. That whole going to be renovated, which is why it was unoccupied and why maybe went on a little bit longer than it should have. But again, it's kind of a turned corner, I want to say, if only as an example that proves the rule, because previously we have had more than a couple buildings in downtown burned down or go into such a state of neglect that the only reasonable thing, or at least what was argued about anyway, was to tear it down. And in this case, the renovation is moving forward even after this major damage. Again, I think that any observers over the last, let's call it, decade wouldn't have been terrifically surprised if this was flattened and turned into, well, another service level parking lot, of which it's actually right next to one. That one's a longer term one, but I mean, still, it's how it's happened in downtown for way, way, way too long. So the fact that there is something else happening is encouraging, but I think that there's also something can be read a little bit larger from that about how actually things are going and progressing for downtown. And by that, I mean, we've got, amongst other things, that convention coming into downtown. We talked and kind of hinted at it all last week, but one of the better encapsulations of it from El Paso Inc., actually. El Paso to host 2024 Texas Democratic Convention, first time in over 20 years. And the analogies and comparisons that happen from recently abound, of course. So this is going to be happening in 2024, and it's the Texas Democratic Convention, as announced by El Paso County Democratic Party Chair Adora Oaxaca. So that's coming in a couple of years, but the juxtapositions between how downtown is right now, or is going to be even by that point, and how it was previously, because the one event I referenced, because it was impressive enough in its own scope and scale, that previous bowling national tournaments, technically I think was the right phrase for it, but it was more of a convention, because I mean, we saw waves and waves of people coming in constantly for months on end. Literally, if you never went out there, it was a sight to see, because they built a couple dozen bowling lanes, or maybe even more, that I think about it, in the convention center downtown, like literal full lanes, like you would find anywhere else here. So the fact that that happened and that brought thousands and tens of thousands of people to town over a period of months was good. But one of the common refrains that I heard in doing news coverage at that point in time was that, well, there's nothing to do in downtown. I mean, sure, they've got, frankly, it was hard to stay in downtown because the Camino Real Hotel, now, though, of course, the Hotel Paso del Norte, renamed and renovated, was not at full capacity at the time. If you stayed in some of the rooms at that time or had any experiences with like the conventions or anything going on in there, you might have a sense of what I'm talking about. It was a little run down, is being maybe a little bit generous. John Brazelton asking, will there be a Democratic Party left in 2024? Again, we're talking state level, so if anything, well, there might be even more endangerment for in this state here. But I fully expect that the convention will continue on, even if we've got a couple of interim elections that may prove to be difficult territory for that particular party, but I digress on that point. Again, the whole idea about downtown is that, again, with the DeSoto and with this previous example, another major convention, not exactly on the same order of magnitude. I think we're looking at like, a couple dozen thousand or less than that, actually, whereas there was tens of thousands, a couple tens of thousands that came through with that previous bowling tournament. Again, I hesitate to call it a tournament, but I can't think of the better phrase at the moment, because it was constant and going on all the time. Like, again, it was impressive, and to my understanding, they reclaimed the wood that was used for that lanes to be used in buildings later on, so I guess waste not, want not. But with this convention coming downtown, we have a very different downtown situation where there are more major hotels, of course, with the plaza opening back up. We're looking at things like the DeSoto going through renovations. I wouldn't be too surprised if it wasn't ready by that point, but still, the fact that we are looking at an actual desirability to do such a thing, even after major damage, and not just bulldoze and just charge parking for it, which would have been the simple solution, but that people are seeing more opportunities downtown, I find encouraging. Even as we have plenty of fights and fisticuffs and verbal kerfuffles over the whole situation, I am on record and will continue to say so until proven otherwise, bullish on El Paso. I think the real challenge facing downtown beyond, again, arena issues, those kind of things, is, well, the livability and the ability for people to be down there. Because sure, we have businesses down there, like workday businesses, and then people would vacate. Now we have people actually able to begin to be living in the downtown area with some residential areas, and now some more entertainment kind of popping up in and around the area. That's not just a, well, we got to go and then leave kind of place. There's reasons to go and stick around downtown. The thing that is missing now, I've heard some people talking about this, and I kind of tend to agree with it, is the idea of actual livability downtown, to be able to do everything they need to downtown, including such as shopping for food downtown. Besides restaurants, of course, is a notable food desert, but it was something that may be needing to continue on. So as much as we talk about some of these big issues here, I think actually making it a livable and usable place for people to be and not having to flee the area every time they have a need. Flee may be a little dramatic, but you get my point there. The idea is that for a lot of major needs, you then, even if you're living down there, you have to figure out how to get out of downtown, which all of these transit projects that we've discussed as well make a interesting prospect, is the word I'm going to choose to use here. But I think that's, given the circumstances and the trends we're seeing, might be feasible as long as we can actually focus, and maybe even some enterprising individual in the community deciding that they are going to fill that need might be very useful and finding themselves doing well in downtown as it is here. RJ saying that with the bowling, it was more than a tourney, it was a season or a long season. I mean, it was kind of like, okay, national finals, I think may have been the correct term for it. I gotta look up the actual organization name that did it, because there were constant waves of people coming through. They had to qualify for it, but it lasted for quite a long time, much more than the usual, weekend conventions I'm used to going over to the convention center anyway. But that's my idea on downtown, as shown by both this coming convention, the state level Democrats convention in 2024, and the potential fate now of the DeSoto. Now, of course, this is situation could change here, but that's, I guess, the case with everything here in life. And that's going to take us through our first break of the hour here. You are tuned into Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Coming out of the break, let's get into some more of those, border issues writ large. Both state border with New Mexico going to pot and doing pretty well at it, apparently, but also on border security implications between the U.S. and Mexico, both the changing policies, what that might mean, and some of the major seizures that have happened even just in our area. So stay tuned. We're Talk El Paso.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the border highway eastbound at Fonseca, a stalled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder. Loop 375 southbound Trans Mountain at the I-10 Desert Boulevard. Stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder there. Airway Boulevard northbound at eastbound Montana, an accident reported. And out in Socorro, North Loop Drive, north of Horizon at Jasper Court. Police at the scene of an accident there. Kerry Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
There's a man in Australia who came to America only to fall in love with a great American culinary experience, buffalo wings. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
As the country bounces back from COVID and mask mandates are lifted, your business needs a lift too. Promote your company right here, right now. Radio ads connect with 93% of Americans every week. That's more than Google, more than Facebook, more than TV. In fact, radio reaches 20% more millennials than TV. Want more of the people you want to talk to all in one place? Visit iHeartAdvertising.com and get AM and FM working for you. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. A staggering 8 million tons of plastic ends up in the world's oceans every year. If current trends continue, our oceans could contain more plastic than fish by 2050. Do your part. Purchase items made from renewable or recycled content and recycle whenever possible. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Hey folks, this is Andrew J. Polk, and I love supporting local and experiencing all the world has to offer, which is why I love Enhanced Flavors, your local source of over 40 quality flavored olive oils and balsamic vinegars. You don't have to scour the globe or even leave leave home to taste all that's offered in extra virgin olive oil and great flavored varieties from Italy, Greece, Spain, and Tunisia, and certified balsamic vinegar straight from the Modena province of Italy. Look for enhanced flavors at your favorite farmers markets to spice up your life, or find them online at enhancedflavors.com.
Hi, can I take your order?
300 double cheeseburger meals, please.
You know, maybe instead of going to the drive-thru to feed the entire construction crew every day, you should just order through EasyCater. Food arrives on time and as ordered.
Oh, yeah?
Also, you'll stop taking out our drive-thru speaker with your backhoe.
What?
Look out for that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Some food just doesn't work at work, but EasyCater just does. Food for work, on time, and as ordered from over 82,000 restaurants. Order 24/7 at easycater.com.
Okay, that was me. Sorry.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show. I'll have that phone line open a little bit later, as we usually do towards the end of this first hour here. But we also got the comments coming in. A lot of them will run our social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch is where you can find us on the under either Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk on most of those. RJ and John Browselton chiming in. Flacca Jimenez dropping the reaction, the like there on the page. Do appreciate it, because that it helps with the algorithm and all that good stuff. But beyond that, we appreciate the support, but also the getting it out there. It helps more people see it. So if you do that kind of a thing, we appreciate it. And commenting all makes it more possible for more people to get involved in this kind of a thing, which is kind of our mission here, to have discussion about the things affecting us here in the borderland. Talking a little bit before the break about downtown and its relative features, futures, possibilities. And 40,000 people, actually, according to the El Paso Times, at the time, back in 2015, by the end of the U.S. Bowling Congress Open Championships, I guess is the technically correct way to put it. Tournament style-ish, but, just a ton of people. And then about 20,000 more people came through as, family members coming along with them. So quite a lot of people on this. I got to quote this from the article at the time. 318,617 games of bowling were played inside the 62-lane. It was huge. It spanned the length of the convention center, the main floor there. So again, if you never saw that, it was quite the sight to behold. But so not anywhere near that kind of a size thing. I think we're looking at a couple dozen thousand. That makes sense, from the upcoming convention. But still, the fact that downtown is being focused on for such a thing, even if we've got these other kerfuffles going on when it comes to features of downtown, what shouldn't be there, what should be demolished, what shouldn't. That's going to continue apace here. But in the meantime, the fact that it keeps moving and people are willing to invest in downtown, that is what more interesting to me. But speaking of commerce and also trade and people making a lot of movements, shall we say, there's definitely a lot of movement that happened over this past week, end of the week and weekend, into New Mexico, as we saw the beginning of the legalized marijuana sales for recreational use. Again, we've talked more than a little bit about the implications coming from that, the legal ramifications, the economic implications, the government funding levels. And so depending on how you break it down, at least according to our news partners over at KFOX 14, they are looking at about $3 million and change as what came out of the total amount spent on recreational marijuana. Some of the numbers out there might be combining both the recreational and medicinal sales over the weekend. So about 3.5 million recreational sold, about 1.8 medical marijuana sales over the weekend. So you might be seeing some of those quotes of about $5 million in sales over the weekend if you combine the two. So really that new number, the 3.5 million, is the new one that happened just over this weekend. And a lot of businesses out there. $2 million on the first day, Saturday about $1 million, and about 550,000 on Sunday. I guess people were well stocked up here. So there aren't any specific city by city level. So we're not gonna be able to know yet anyway how such as Las Cruces or Sunland Park fared in this, though the state agency that tracks all of these things, the Cannabis Control Division for the state of New Mexico, has said that they will be refining down numbers a little bit more coming with it. Flaca Jimenez mentioning about downtown. Interesting perspective here. Now that baseball season is coming up, I've been thinking about doing a downtown staycation weekend. Encourage others to do the same. Let's bring a few dollars downtown. Interesting proposal there. I mean, we've got, again, more entertainment possibilities if you consider the ballpark and the things that come along with it. Even if that was its own kerfuffle to get here, it's in place now, and there's no denying that. I want to say I even saw some on city council who had been very opposed and unhappy with the whole prospect ending up at a game here. No, I don't begrudge them, or previous city council members, I should say. I don't begrudge them that at all. But I mean, fully encourage people to take part in downtown and just supporting the community in general. If that's the way you want to do it, more power to you. So that's, I mean, and even as dollars are moving across state lines here, just remember that enforcement still exists and it's still very illegal in Texas. But also at the same time, we are looking at, a lot more issues when it comes to border enforcement. Speaking of a different amount of border, John Browston saying I see major amounts of traffic stops in West Texas in coming months here. Again, CBP and state troopers and El Paso police, El Paso sheriffs saying that they're going to keep doing what they're doing regularly. So maybe not any specifically enhanced enforcement and any different policy in place. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few, what's the technical term for it? Vehicle safety checkpoints, or because they can't say that they're cannabis checkpoints. They're not even really allowed to my understanding, to do like DUI or DWI checkpoints anymore. It's they stop and ask you and make sure you have your documentation, legal status checkpoint, and anything that emerges from that they'll deal with. So if you're, I remember back in my college days, one time that in my dorm room had the door to the hallway open because why not? I think it was a warm summer-ish or early summer evening. And then just you heard down the hall people exclaiming as just not a literal cloud, but the wave of smell of kind of burnt popcorn-ish at the time. I don't know what the hell they were doing, but it's noticeable as it came here, and eventually it hit me, and I was left turning my fans out the door to get it out of there. Point is, it's very, very noticeable if you're being indiscreet about it. So if you have that kind of a situation when you're at these stops, you're probably going to have a bad time because, sure, there must be a reasonable cause for them to search your vehicle, but let's just say I don't expect there to be a lack of drug dogs getting their use in our area and in our region and potentially at any of these stops that may or may not be occurring. Really, I wonder how they're geared up for that because, sure, something may be apparent and they ask you to step out of the vehicle here. I mean, no, you're right. Do the right thing, but also don't be a bonehead and think that you're going to be hotboxing across state lines because you're going to have a real bad time here. But again, that legal aspect and even the federal enforcement of it and the state level legalization, I think the way the AP put it is Texas, the largest remaining prohibition state, which is not a way I'd heard it before when we started talking about these articles, but, well, wouldn't be surprised if that conversation continues, how much of a draw there is, and particularly I'm going to be looking really closely at year-end reports at the end of this on any publications and releases that come out of local areas. Clovis, New Mexico, another focus here, a little bit further up to the east on the state line of Texas here in New Mexico. A lot of possibilities. We'll see how the tourism does and if these much vaunted, economic gains that New Mexico and New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has talked about will prove out. And again, the probably year-end reports or any reports in the meantime coming out of, local and state-level agencies on the Texas side of things on how enforcement has gone through will be fascinating to see, I am sure, here. It's going to take us through our next break here for the bottom of the hour. But coming out of the bottom of the hour, we are going to talk more about a different border and a different kind of trade. I mean, we still have things being smuggled across the international border between Texas and New Mexico and throughout our region, including the Isleta port of entry, seeing, a major seizure of some, we talk about fentanyl a lot, but there are still plenty of other dangerous substances coming across. And of course, with changes in policies coming, the impact on the border and enforcement thereof still very much front of mind and impacts we could be seeing right here in the borderland. So we'll talk more about that coming out of this break. You are again tuned into Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot more to come up, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, this is Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is preparing for the end of the Title 42 policy at the U.S.-Mexico border. The CDC confirms it will lift the public health order known as Title 42, which had restricted migrants from entering the United States through land borders. The assumption at the time was migrants had a greater chance of being COVID-19 positive as they were seeking asylum. The decision to end Title 42 as a public health order comes from the CDC's director, Rochelle Walensky. Walensky believes there are tools available to fight the virus, including COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutics. Additionally, more than 95% of the U.S. population lives in a low COVID-19 community level like El Paso. Therefore, the public health risk is not as grave as before. The Department of Homeland Security is expected to end the policy on May 23rd. In the meantime, DHS will begin programs to vaccinate migrants against COVID-19. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
On the border highway eastbound at Fonseca, a stalled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder. Loop 375 southbound Trans Mountain at the I-10 Desert Boulevard. Stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder there. Airway Boulevard northbound at eastbound Montana, an accident reported. And out in Socorro, North Loop Drive, north of Horizon at Jasper Court. Police at the scene of an accident there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Severe Weather Center. This is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We start off our work week looking really nice, but we end up with another wind maker coming in to kick off our Tuesday and Wednesday, even bringing some strong enough winds on Tuesday for some patchy blowing dust and some slightly cooler temperatures. But don't get too comfy with those cooler temperatures. We're back in the 80s by the weekend.
This report is sponsored by Brakemasters.
Before your day is done, Brakemasters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Brakemasters shape. Download coupons at Brakemasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Brakemasters. We give you an honest break.
We're planning a trip to Spain later this year.
But our Spanish
It's pretty bad. So we're using Babbel.
Babbel's conversation-based method teaches you real-life words and phrases. And with Babbel's interactive, bite-sized lessons, you'll remember what you learned.
There's no easier way to learn another language.
Ahora hablamos español.
He just said now he speaks Spanish.
Babbel, language for life. Now try Babbel for free. Just go to Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com.
Hey, spring is here, and the warmer weather means you've got a lot more going on. Don't let COVID get in the way of any of it. COVID vaccines offer the strongest possible protection now and from long-term side effects in the future. Protect yourself and your plans. We can do this. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. That's vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
For local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso. Weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you. Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. And let's talk El Paso.
In these uncertain times, it's never been more important to grow your wealth and protect your freedom. Learn how to do that and more with today's top experts at Market Disruptors Live, May 6th through the 8th in Dallas, Texas. Save your spot now at MarketDisruptorsLive.com. This report is sponsored by the Market Disruptors Live, May 6th through May 8th in Dallas, Texas.
Weather and traffic info. You need it? We have it. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed. News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. Do appear to be up and at 'em on all of those places over here. So if that's your preference, you're more than welcome to. Of course, we are going to be on air for as long as that transmitter up on the It's out in the desert, actually. That's the interesting thing. Anyway, that's technical. As long as that keeps working, we're going to be on there. So if you're tuned in there in your vehicle, you don't have to comment. We certainly don't require it for you to do anything here. But if you can, I kind of like it because it's a good conversation throughout the show here. Flaco Jimenez saying, I would never consent to a DPS search of my vehicle. I see them do it all the time, and they have no regard for people's belongings. They pull everything out and just strew it all over the ground. I'm pro-cop, but this practice needs to be addressed. I haven't seen much of that. I've seen, some of the compilation videos that end up online about the whole, bad cop stops, that kind of thing, often with a bent to them. It's not exactly like objective, like, here's the full span of how these stops work, because obviously they're not going to show you the boring ones in which nothing happens. So it's a little skewed, I'll agree here, but I haven't seen as much of that, but thankfully never had it, knock on wood, happened to myself here. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of that kind of an impetus happening, particularly along the state lines here. But again, we're not totally strangers to it in this region. You go north, east, or west from here, even within the United States, you're going to end up in some of these checkpoints. So that's federal. And that one's, they're definitely going to ask you about drugs. Well, probably anyway. Just don't do it. Don't be transporting it here. Really, if this is not legal advice. So Flaco Jimenez saying that he's a truck driver and he sees it all the time. Again, yeah, not my experience. Not that I disbelieve you here, just outside of my realm of experience. So I fully believe you that it happens here. And as a truck driver, yeah, that's a whole different level than I ever get into here. But again, we're not too unfamiliar when it comes to the way we have enforcement already. Probably going to be ramping up. Wouldn't be too surprised in our area here. And again, not that this is legal advice. I am not a lawyer, and if you get your butt thrown in the cooler, don't blame it on me. But, I mean, seriously, if you're going to go over and use it, don't expect to bring anything back with you. I mean, you can't use it in public, but a lot of these places can offer you ways to do it. Just don't be dumb. Don't be dumb with it. And, I mean, do remember your rights here and just expect them to, be doing more enforcement in the coming days here. RJ, on the other issue, though, of course, we were talking legalized state level here, but still very illegal is anything of these illicit substances crossing the international boundaries. But, of course, we're also talking about border enforcement coming with it here. John Brazelton saying that Fourth Amendment is suspended within 25 miles of the U.S., Mexican, or Canada border. Okay, so that's not exactly true. The Fourth Amendment absolutely applies within the entire continental United States, but actually it's 100-mile bounds that there are enhanced powers on the part of Customs and Border Protection, which includes, like, recent count, like half of the American population, because it's not just land borders but also sea borders that incurred on this. So we're talking good chunks of California, the West Coast, major of the population centers on the East Coast here, and of course everywhere that we're around here in our area. So that's why they have those checkpoints at a certain level, about 50 miles in, I believe, technically. So that's the major enforcement zone, but they still have enhanced powers throughout a lot of it. The Fourth Amendment does not evaporate, though. They still have to have reasonable suspicion, among other things, but they may get a little bit more feisty with you if you're stuff that might work elsewhere probably doesn't work around here. But again, Fourth Amendment absolutely still exists within the entire continental United States. But on border enforcement in general, RJ saying that May 23rd, the border is going to explode with trafficked kids, fentanyl, other drugs, and I'm sure a few deaths crossing the desert in summer. That does seem to happen here. And Biden will care about the kids. ODs are U.S. sovereignty and the burden on the system here. Again, it was a line during the State of the Union here, but whether or not it actually continues forth, and we see, I still am very much anticipating an actual damn policy to come out of this administration, particularly if we're looking at the only remaining enforcement mechanism evaporating. So we're talking about Title 42 here, and of course that we just heard during the news update from our news partners over at KFOX 14 of the CDC going on strictly pandemic-related issues, saying that, this is no longer needed. We have other mitigation issues. And that may be accurate in its own way. Again, the doctrine of unintended consequences is about the most consistent doctrine that has ever been applied in any form of government within the United States in its entire history. The fact that, we'll look at things, I think it'll be fine. I don't think there'll be any other aspects or impacts coming from this decision we're making. And, that blew up in our faces is way more common than ever should be. So we're looking at that be very much a possibility. With the removal of Title 42, sure, pandemic restrictions and the issues coming with that may have lessened in the interim. The simple fact of the amount of just sheer numbers of people, again, from the Department of Homeland Security itself, 18,000 people per day potentially crossing the border if this goes away. Again, you're just missing the silver platter to hand a better marketing campaign to the cartels, to the coyotes, to all of the individuals who have already been raking in the cash from the people that have been making the decision to come to this sector of the border and of the entire border overall. But we, of course, have been a focus in our own right. That is one of the many changes that, of course, has happened over the years and over the different administrations in these migration patterns. So, removal of Title 42, I'm not going to say it's strict explosions. I mean, rhetorical there, I get your being, but I do think that we are going to be seeing a level of just spread thinness on the part of particularly, Border Patrol agents, but even Customs and Border Enforcement. And because of all of what they have to do, even at the ports of entry, it's just going to go nuts. And we are probably going to see even more of these because, the weird pattern we'd seen over the last administration and a half, vaguely, give or take, was the I'm coming and requesting asylum, as opposed to kind of the 90s era, where I'm going to refer to it as, of people just trying to essentially not interact with any officials on their way into the country and then just kind of go about their business. People coming and presenting themselves specifically to authorities was quite the change here, and it seems like we're already seeing some eking back towards that previous way. I mean, I feel like in the last week, we saw a half dozen examples, even just in our area, from smuggling happening, from people even just in gravel trucks. That may have been in the Del Rio area, but still within the general radius of our broadcast signal, even as you can get it on a good night anyway, was just more and more of this kind of back to the previous status quo of just trying to sneak across, no interaction, and the many, many dangerous ways that can be dealt with. But even then, even as we're talking about drugs in its own capacity, of course, that smuggling continues apace here. RJ saying that there are plenty of laws in the books to protect our border, but what do you do if the puppet won't enforce them here? I believe referring to the administration there. I mean, yeah, if you're not enforcing the laws, I mean, it kind of parallels then to gun laws, I guess you could say there. But policy is what I'm talking about, because, like, sure, people who are, have warrants out, who are doing other illegal activities, who are smuggling, all of that is still very illegal in all of its spades. But again, if you're not talking about the impacts on the system here, I mean, and yes, illegal entry to the country is illegal, but it's a misdemeanor for the most part, even if there's been some attempts to upgrading it to a different charges here. I mean, we are talking about needing a policy in place, because we're just going to go say, well, Title 42 is gone, so good luck, everyone. Have fun with it. Bad plan, very bad plan, but also just, I mean, even beyond the human smuggling, the drug smuggling. I mean, the news coming out today, you can also find this over from our news partners at KFOX 14, 548 pounds of liquid meth seized at the Isleta port of entry. They've got some pictures of it, and it just kind of looks like, dirty brown water in a bucket here, but it was actually concealed within a gas tank of a tractor trailer that was crossing it at the time. And this stuff, estimated street value of $3 million, because, okay, I am not an expert on methamphetamines or how they work, but I mean, in the liquid format, I think you can then, bring it back down into a more, usable method. But this is the kind of stuff that's right up there with fentanyl in my mind, is the stuff that can really ruin your day and or kill you. Because I think there's at least, maybe it was in our region or a nearby region, there was someone that was bringing across a water bottle of this stuff that ended up being this liquid meth, and they were told, as border enforcement sometimes happen, that, okay, that liquid there, take a sip of it, okay, you're good to go. And the dude did it, and not immediately, but promptly died from it, because this stuff is dangerous as hell. So with more of this kind of smuggling happening and resources being even stretched further thin here, again, would love to see an actual comprehensive policy coming out of this administration. We have seen some piecemeal stuff, some stops and starts, and a lot of consternation on the part of local elected officials. Again, the last interview we had with El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar talking about the fact that we do need more enforcement. We need more resources being put into, even if she also had a focus then on the processing. And of course, the letter that came out more recently from her and some other congressional and Senate Democrats on the idea of doing in-country processing, still find that lacking a bit in the local enforcement. And of course, other of our area representatives, including from the Texas 23rd Congressional District, Tony Gonzalez, having sent a letter along with John Cornyn, Ted Cruz, to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, calling for the continuation of Title 42. Again, I mean, Okay, Title 42, I am not in love with Title 42 for its own sake that I think it's a great policy. I'm very much on record as saying that it's barely a policy. It's more like a one-line executable that you put into a computer program of remove everyone from the country. That has some increasing exceptions with it as we've gone over with. So it is basically not a policy already on its own, but to just remove it without anything in place, as much as the circumstances of to why it is in place may be valid about its removal when it comes to the pandemic issues. To say that, and therefore there will be no further impacts, you're missing half the damn picture, more than half the damn picture, when we're looking at the, on the order of 500,000 people a month, therefore trying to cross the border and not being expelled without this. If you really don't have any other plan to deal with that, we have been at, 200,000 encounters in some months and end of the year tallies we were talking about last year as it is. You think this is going to go better? Because I got a clue for you. It's not. So that's, I'm going to scream about this till we're blue in the face here. But tell you what, we're already due for that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines because I'm sure there are plenty of thoughts about this and all the other things that affect us here in the borderlands. So if you're wanting to call in through the show, the number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Seen a whole bunch of new crashes in El Paso traffic. Border Highway eastbound at Fonseca. Stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. Got a crash that's slowing traffic north Mesa Street at Conley Road, just east of Donovan. An accident Loma Land Drive at Vista del Sol. Got an injury accident eastbound Montwood Drive at Joe Battle. And a crash on Cliff Drive at Ochoa. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Market Disruptors Live May 6th through May 8th in Dallas, Texas. In these uncertain times, it's never been more important to grow your wealth and protect your freedom. Learn how to do that and more with today's top experts at Market Disruptors Live, May 6th through the 8th in Dallas, Texas. Save your spot now at marketdisruptorslive.com.
Maybe you've had to put off a health appointment or two during the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you're 45 or older, there's one test you shouldn't put off any longer. Regular screening for colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is a leading cancer killer, but it can be prevented with regular screening starting at 45. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. It takes guts to put your health first. Ask your doctor about your options today. Visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more information.
So many real estate agents to choose from. How do you find the best one? Hi, it's Glenn Beck. One key is just looking for the investment that an agent is willing to make to get your home sold. Brian Birds with eXp Realty and his team have a marketing budget 25 times higher than the average agent's annual income. This means your home gets maximum exposure because it's marketed to the widest possible audience and gets you the highest possible sales price. Brian is so confident in his ability to sell your home fast and for more money that he's willing to put his own money on the line. If your home doesn't sell at the price and deadline you agreed to, he'll buy it from you himself. You're not going to find another real estate agent in El Paso who is that invested in getting your home sold. He's the only one I'd call. Google Brian Birds. That's Brian, B-U-R-D-S. Read over 400 five-star reviews because I'm not the only one who knows you should call Brian Birds. Google Brian Birds or just check out brianbirds.com.
In these uncertain times, it's never been more important to grow your wealth and protect your freedom. Learn how to do that and more with today's top experts at Market Disruptors Live, May 6th through the 8th in Dallas, Texas. Save your spot now at marketdisruptorslive.com.
I can't believe he found them.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show. Of course, we got that phone line open right now, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot of comments coming in as well. Jay Visconti, RJ, John Brazelton, Flaco Jimenez, and more tuning in, chiming in, dropping those likes and reacts. Do appreciate that. Because, if you can share it, what we got going on here. A lot of this, it benefits from more people being involved in it, even if you occasionally get to an interesting comment or two or three or eight. We can deal with it all because I still feel that we are doing something important, not to toot my own horn, but talking about the things that affect us here in the borderland, because no one else is going to discuss it the way we are. There's certainly plenty of, national politicians, national pundits talking about these kind of things, most of which can come with their own agendas of, self-promotion and stuff here. I'm not immune to that last one, but really, I think that we need to be talking about the things that affect us here because no one else is going to do it the way that we do. More comments coming in. Flaco Jimenez talking right now. The differences between Democrats and Republicans here, and the back and forth between it. Bring up an interesting point there, actually, about the whole voting for or against someone that happens, and it seems to be more the against than for someone lately here. Again, anyone going out to vote is something I'm going to support until given reason not to. But beyond that, I do think that really thinking about how someone's policies, their avowed positions, is really going to impact you is the major reason to vote for someone, as opposed to, well, this guy's less bad, therefore I'll vote for this person or whatever their political party is. Yeah, we got too much of that right now. But, and just say this in reference, that we do have a couple of elections coming up, both the uniform May election, that one coming up in early May with a couple of Texas constitutional amendments relating to homestead exemptions and taxation on it. And then, of course, the primary runoffs here. Have to still vote in the primary that you signed on to for in the, previous primary election before the runoffs here. But if you didn't vote in either, you can still vote in them. Just keep that in mind here. But let's get to those phone lines here. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you guys, one of your people on Facebook already mentioned this and everything, but I'd like to probe it a little bit further, and that's about the Fourth Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for keeping people, coming into Texas under the influence of marijuana, but I'm also, the unintended consequence is a violation of people's Fourth Amendment rights, unreasonable search and seizure. If a cop pulls me over and they say, I'm going to ask, what's the matter, officer? What was I doing? Anything? He has to tell me. Mm-hmm. And if he tells me that I'm just I noticed that you drove over from New Mexico, and I wanted to check your driver's license. That's not reasonable. Mm-hmm. And so, if something like that happened to me, and I'm not trying to tell people what to do, but I just sit there and say, you don't have a right to do this. If you don't have any reason to pull me over, you don't have a reason to ask me any questions at all. This is unreasonable.
There's tons of videos out here that a lot of them have seemingly agendas behind them if you look into it. But yes, and again, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice here, but you can be pulled over, but for them to search your vehicle, there has to be reasons behind it, referring to the probable cause you're talking about here. They can demand to see your license and identification if you're operating a motor vehicle. You are required to have those as a condition of the operation of that vehicle. So they can ask for that, but anything beyond that, and if they go beyond it and saying, well, you have to let me in, you have to roll down the window, you have to open up the car and let me search through it. Here's what the best thing I've seen, the way to go about it, the one I agree with the most, anyway, again, not legal advice, but to say that, if you don't want to, I do not consent to a search of my vehicle. And if they do it anyway, just be very clear that you do not consent to it. You'd like to speak to a supervisor, that kind of a thing. I am not saying to get involved with an officer in any capacity, because that'll then probably invalidate any of the concerns you had leading up to it, but make it very clear. And even, you can freely record in a public sphere, including in the state of Texas, and I do believe New Mexico, on your cell phone, just for your own personal safety, as long as you're not interfering with the, process of an officer and investigation, that you are allowed to do that. Make it very clear, because even if something ends up happening, you end up getting charged for something, if they did not go about it the right way and you did not act foolishly. Essentially, that's the kind of thing that allows that to get thrown out. So prudence is a very good way that, I've never involved in these situations, knock on wood, I won't. That's just the kind of mindset I go into if I were to find myself in that.
But that's the strong arm of government taking away your rights, because if somebody does that and I say, no, I do not consent to that, and he arrests me and brings me in, taking away, and fines me, whatever, and then, whatever happens but after that, it is a matter that, he has violated my rights at the first encounter. And especially, for an officer to pull me over and check to find out if I have a driver's license, I'm sorry, he doesn't have the right to do that. Not under the Fourth Amendment.
Again,
okay, there's one other thing I did want to get to. Okay, and that is, have you heard any member of Congress asking for an investigation, special investigation, special counsel looking into the goings-on of the Biden crime family?
I think I want to say there have been calls like that should be looked into, or beyond that, actually. But actual, specific, we need to vote on this, actionable things, as opposed to general overtures. Not exactly a thing I've seen to get to that level, but I will say, in general, without getting too far into it, there may be a tide turning there. The reporting seems to be getting a little bit different on that whole situation, specifically referring to Hunter Biden there. So I wouldn't be surprised if more actionable things start coming up here, as opposed to, a lot of it I would categorize as rhetoric up to this point. So once we start getting to the point of actual, let's appoint a council, let's schedule votes kind of thing, that I wouldn't be too surprised if it starts coming up here before too long.
Ron Johnson and Senator Grassley are the only ones that have said that it warrants investigation. I have not heard anybody on the Republican side or anybody in Congress actually calling for an investigation of something that could possibly be a national security issue. And, if it turns out, but they have plenty of reason to do that with stuff that is on Hunter Biden's laptop. So I don't understand, if you want to see a reason why people don't trust our government on both sides, it's because nobody on both sides are looking after what we need to be looking after, and that's national security. And this is a blatant situation that requires things looked into. If it turns out that there's not anything, then fine. But they did an investigation because Trump made a phone call. Okay, it just doesn't wash, and that's the reason why people don't trust our government anymore. Because there is, when it comes to something like this, where there is absolutely a problem, they don't choose both sides of the aisle. Nobody says anything.
This and a lot of other reasons. Again, Congress has historic low approval ratings for a lot of reasons here. But again, I'm on record and will fully say that if there's questions about their investigation is literally the mechanism which we're supposed to resolve this. And I guess in this particular issue, there's been so much both not reporting or overblown in some ways here. It has fallen into some categories where people dismiss it a la conspiracy theory, though. Again, investigate it. Let's answer these questions and then go from there before we really get any further into it. This and a lot of the other circumstances we get into here where assertions are made, let's investigate it, let's figure it out, and then go from there. I fully support that here. We got to take that next break right now, coming into the top of the hour, so thank you for the point in the call here. We're going to be back next hour with more Talk El Paso and more open phone lines here. Again, if you're wanting to call in during the show, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM. Back after this break with more. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the border highway eastbound, watch for a stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder at Fonseca. Medical teams on the scene of an injury accident Dyer northbound at Hercules. Take Diana Drive as an alternate there. Lee Trevino northbound south of the 10 Gateway at Kastner. An injury accident there and a crash with injuries on North Mesa Street at Conley, just east of Donovan. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Paid for by GovMint.com.
Have you heard? The United States Mint has issued the Morgan Silver Dollar for the first time in 100 years. Not only that, but they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgan. Radio station. Only 175,000 legal tender silver dollars were issued.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. An arrest has been made in connection to Sunday's mass shooting in Sacramento that left 6 people dead. Police Chief Kathy Lester tells KCRA 26-year-old Dondre Martin was taken into custody on charge of assault with a firearm and other charges. SWAT members and detectives also served search warrants at 3 other homes. The Senate Judiciary Committee will send Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court to the full Senate. Dems hold a razor-thin majority and will pull procedural levers to call a confirmation vote. Jackson is expected to be confirmed by the full Senate later this week. The White House thinks Russia should not be a member of the UN Human Rights Council.
The president believes it's ludicrous for Russia to be a member of the Human Rights Council.
Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the U.S. ambassador to the UN will call for Russia's suspension from the council this week. The South is bracing for more severe weather through Wednesday. Thunderstorms are expected in parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi into this evening, along with the possibility of a few tornadoes. The Deep South is likely to get more severe thunderstorms on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it's anticipated that thunderstorms will drive a cold front into the southeast. A trio of states are suing to keep a public health rule in place, which has been used to immediately deport many migrants caught at the southern border. Lisa Taylor reports.
Attorneys General in Arizona, Louisiana, and Missouri call the end of Title 42 a man-made, self-inflicted calamity. In their lawsuit filed in the Western District of Louisiana, they quote members of the Democratic Party who say the move by the Biden administration shows a lack of understanding about the crisis at our border. In February alone, more than half of all migrants encountered at the border were expelled under the order. I'm Lisa Taylor.
You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The White House is detailing the immense fiscal risks of climate change. The Office of Management and Budget is doing its first risk assessment on the impact of climate change on the federal budget. The OMB estimates that climate change could cost $2 trillion per year by the end of the 21st century. Florida students begin taking the FSAs for the final time this week. Joel Malkin reports.
As of the 2022-23 academic year, the Florida Standard Assessments will be no more, but kids in grades 3 and up still have to take them for the remainder of this school year. Governor DeSantis signed the Student Assessments Bill into law last month, which replaces the assessment test with a progress monitoring system.
Today, we come not to praise the FSA, but to bury it.
The governor says the FSAs provided no feedback before the summer, while the new system will allow for progress to be monitored throughout the school year. But the president of the Florida Education Association, statewide teachers union, says it will add more work to, quote, already overwhelmed teachers. I'm Joel Malkin.
An upscale Starbucks store in New York City is voting to unionize. Jennifer Pulsoni has more.
The Starbucks Reserve Roastery near Chelsea Market in the Meatpacking District voting in favor 46-36, making it a first for unionizing this type of Starbucks. There are several other union shops for the coffee chain nationwide and nearly 200 locations across the country that have filed petitions to unionize.
A robot dog is now wandering the ancient ruins of Pompeii. Officials in Italy are using a robotic canine named Spot to explore the safety conditions of the coastal city that was buried in ash by Mount Vesuvius nearly 2,000 years ago. The Pompeii Archaeological Park say Spot's duties range from inspecting buildings for structural issues to exploring tunnels dug by thieves. Officials hope Spot will allow them to continue with work on the park with greater speed and in total safety. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by Breakmasters.
Before your day is done, Breakmasters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Breakmasters shape. Download coupons at breakmasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Breakmasters. We give you an honest break.
Hey, spring is here,
And the warmer weather means you've got a lot more going on. Don't let COVID get in the way of any of it. COVID vaccines offer the strongest possible protection now and from long-term effects in the future. Protect yourself and your plans. We can do this. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. That's vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Only in the forest can you see this. And this. And this. But nothing beats the moment you see that.
Cool!
That's your child's eyes opening up to a world of possibilities.
I didn't know it could do that!
Because one trip to the forest can spark a world of difference.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go, like hiking, canoeing, fishing, or camping. Or create your own adventure with family and friends, and you might just see this. Your moment's out there. Find it at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working. Who, me? Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. All those places allow you to see the show, chime in if you want to, or more on Twitter. It's more sliding into the DMs there without the implication. But really, all of those are to say that you can get at us, get involved with the show, see what we're talking about, and chime in if you want to. But we also, of course, have that phone line open here. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Calling in during a segment, you get put on a brief hold, but we hear what's going on during the show here. But we do have those phone lines open, talking about a bunch of stuff here today. Just always sometimes a challenge, or lately it feels like more and more of a challenge, to narrow down to a few things to focus on here today. So downtown development, what's going on through the lens of both the DeSoto Hotel, that Texas State Democrat convention that going to be coming into town in a couple of years now, what that means for how downtown has been progressing, the stuff available there, economic development kind of writ large, I guess you could say, plus New Mexico going to pot, but making money off of it, apparently. How much actual revenue comes out, I'll be able to tell a little bit later in the year. Whether it continues apace is an interesting question, because you have the big boom. What is it going to be, like an opening weekend kind of situation, or is the demand going to keep being there? But a lot of other stuff being discussed as well, border issues and Title 42 being removed, the implications that come from that, a whole lot more. A lot of people chiming in over on the social media pages as well. Maria Coleman saying was on 54 yesterday afternoon, and a white school bus with windows painted black merged on. The driver was an obvious government employee who would not make eye contact. Further down the road, you saw people waiting in line at Sam's to buy gas. There appears to be no shortage of fuel to transport illegals free of charge. We are being taxed for this policy. Why is the public aware of this? I think there's a typo there, but it's our country and our money. I mean, yeah, anytime that you see a government expenditure, you should probably think of it as, well, I paid for that because it's accurate. I mean, I don't think we're seeing, I'm not aware of shortages happening yet. I will say that, of gas shortages, of places saying we don't have gas. So we're not quite back in that, embargo era kind of problem here, but expensive and people seeking out the cheapest they can, that's very much definitely happening here. So we've got just about every three-letter agency you can think about is probably active in this region, even if not totally confirmed. I mean, we've seen a couple of the law enforcement responses that have had to happen to major events going around here. I mean, there's a lot of agencies that you've heard and some that you've never heard of that are definitely active in our area. So wouldn't know exactly what that operation was, but you can guarantee that your money is paying for it here. RJ saying, if you're doing a 45 on the 10 and you're not grandpa material, you're stoned here, might get pulled over. Again, the whole reasonable or probable cause definition is probably going to get a little bit of exercise and stretching in these coming weeks and months here. But again, that's just some of the conversation. Jay Visconti, John Brazelton, Flaco Jimenez, and more tuning in, chiming in over there on the social medias. If you want to, you're more than welcome to. But let's get to those phone lines now. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM. Right now, we do have Barbara on the west side here with us. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew, for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm back on the subject of immigration.
Yep.
We all know that Title 42 is set to expire on May the 23rd. But on April the 26th, the Biden administration is going to be before the Supreme Court, and they're going to be arguing the legality of catch and release under the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm.
Those who oppose catch and release are arguing that the federal statute is very clear that anyone coming to our borders that does not have documentation is to be placed in detention throughout the whole process until their case is adjudicated of credible fear or not. And that's been in the statute since 1996. So we know that Mayorkas and Biden are flagrantly violating the law, and it doesn't surprise anybody. And we remember last year, SCOTUS told the Biden administration that they have to send people back to Mexico or detain them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was reading an article, and it says that Mayorkas since that time, has released 75,000 to the United States and sent only 93 back to Mexico. That is a shameful record. It's like, let's do just enough to fool the American public and see how much we can get away with what they're doing. But in the meantime, these illegal immigrants that he's sending into our country are taking jobs, getting housing, their kids are in school, and they're getting medical care.
Mm.
So to get their jobs, pay back the cartels. And this article that I was reading was very interesting because it referred to this cycle as the cartel's conveyor belt of labor and cash, to which the Biden administration is complicit. And I was surprised to also see in the article, reading the article, that a pro-migration organization and the American Immigration Council conceded that the federal government has broad powers to detain certain immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another poll by Echelon, and they poll heavily Democratic, 9% more Democrats than Republicans. And their polls showed more people disagreed with letting in more illegal immigrants into the country. So there's a wave coming to the other side, realizing the effect of continuing this outrageous idea of letting everybody in and doing away with the Title 42. And, you know, if the federal government would enforce E-Verify and employers were actually penalized hefty for breaking the law and hiring illegal immigrants, some of this may stop. The article also mentioned a poll taken by Oxfam. They're an anti-poverty group. And they said that at least 20 million illegal immigrants have pushed Americans into poverty. 20 million. And our Americans are in poverty. This is reason to stop and think, what are we doing to our country if they are pushing Americans, more and more Americans, into poverty? That's frightening.
I mean, yeah, the implications of any level of this are concerning, I will say. I mean, yeah, there is the refrain of taking jobs Americans don't want, and that certainly does happen. I was actually on Capitol Hill back in 2010 when the infamous Colbert hearing happened, and I was talking about apple picking, and yeah, it sounds like a job I would never want. You get paid like 25 cents a bucket of apples, and it was a heavy thing. I mean, it didn't look like a great job, and I've managed to not be in that position here, so Whether or not people looking for jobs or drawing unemployment instead would actually want to do that work is debatable. But of course, at the scale we're talking about here, it extends far, far, far beyond that. Definitely agree with you on the idea of I-9 verification and actually targeting employers, because that has been an ongoing problem across administrations of, sure, there being, busts, roundups, arresting people that were undocumented working at businesses that weren't authorized to, all that good stuff. But there was never much then of a impact on the employers of saying that, and now you having knowingly employed people or turning a blind eye. I mean, the whole ignorance of law is no excuse defense or a concept never really was applied there. So if that starts happening more, I mean, really, there is a demand for it here. Let's be perfectly honest. There is a demand for cheap labor on the part of businesses in this country. And if they think they can get away with it, they're definitely going to keep doing it. We've seen that more than a few times in a lot of different circumstances, both in our area and across the country here. So it might be an interesting point to be made there. But to the whole idea of the concept of, the removal of Title 42. And yes, the Supreme Court did order the Biden administration to return into the Migrant Protection Protocols, MPP, so-called Remain in Mexico policy. That enforcement has been dubious at best, in my opinion, and from anything I'm seeing.
Well, what's dangerous about all this is I heard, and I don't know if this is fact or rumor, but I think I read an article stating that the administration is thinking of tapping into VA doctors to go to the border and do the vaccinations to these illegal immigrants. Can you imagine that? Our veterans have a wait time, and now they're going to tap the VA? That's just criminal. And you'll recall when President Bush was president, he did some business raids, and I think probably Tyson and those type companies.
Mm-hmm.
And they were busing back illegal immigrants, right? And everybody was outraged that he was doing that. But what is so ironic is that he's the one who started the Any Willing Worker program, which basically allowed anybody to come in and go work. And then he does those business raids. It's like, let's do something to fool the public that we're really doing something. And so you can't believe anybody or anything. And then you read this history and you read what's happening. Tomorrow I'm going to call in and talk about ethical waivers by the Biden administration. It's going to be just as devastating as what I'm calling about today. But there's a silver lining.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 2022, and we take the House and the Senate, and God willing, changes will be made. And in 2024, and reasonable people will be in all three branches. That's my view of what's going to happen the next few years.
Again, there's kind of a trajectory that can be looked at this point. And as much as you may be thinking that, people are seeing the light of this and changing over, I mean, there's some single issue voters out there that this may change their mind. But I guess just in any issue, anytime I look at it when people are saying that, now you have to agree with us, never make that kind of an assumption. But again, we're already looking at a trajectory here of Democrats, national Democrats taking a shellacking in these midterm elections. And most of the information I'm looking at when it comes to the polling numbers, the general favorability of such, looking like it's going to be a similar trajectory, not even to mention that we've had this being the first election after the redistricting coming out of the 2020 census. So there's still a few things up in the air, but it's not looking favorable for the most part here, but we still have a long time to go for November and a lot more that we'll be talking about here. So we got to take that next break right now. So thank you for the point in the call. I do appreciate it. We will get to some more calls in the line here. We get in depth on some issues, but we got a lot more that we will be talking about here. So coming out of this break, we'll get to more of these issues, more of these calls. So if you wanted to call in, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for a stalled vehicle, Gateway Boulevard southbound in McCombs. Injury accident dire northbound at Hercules is slowing traffic. Take Diana Drive as an alternate. Lee Trevino northbound south of the Gateway at Kastner, an injury accident there. And police on scene of an accident North Loop Drive out in Low Valley, north of Horizon at Jasper Court. North Rio Vista Road could be an alternate for you. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Brake Masters.
Before your day is done, Brake Masters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Brake Masters shape. Download coupons at BrakeMasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Brake Masters. We give you an honest break.
iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. Globally, about 1,000 plants we depend on for food and products need to be pollinated by animals, including coffee, melons, chocolate, almonds, and even tequila. Help stabilize the declining honeybee population by planting native plants that they rely on for food, habitat, and nesting. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Susan, it's so great to finally be able to get together again.
Oh, it sure is. And I really appreciate you picking up the bill.
I'm happy to. I've got the extra cash. Since we've all been driving so much more again, I've been using Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, I get real cash back every time I buy gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make $200 to $300 this year.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code FUN for 25 cents a gallon or more cash back on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code FUN to earn 25 cents a gallon or more on your first tank. That's code FUN.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to, are you? Kids, work, listening to the radio. You're busy, which is great because busy people can't get prediabetes. Oh my, I read that wrong. They can. Should have worn my glasses. So visit doihaveprediabetes.org and take a short test, because prediabetes can be reversed.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. A lot of ways to interact with the show. We got that phone line open as we do at this point in the program, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM, the number to call there if you so desire to. We would get those calls. A lot of comments coming in online. Jay Visconti, RJ, Maria Coleman, Flaco Jimenez, John Brazelton, and more tuning in, chiming in over there if you want to here. Davis Conti, not very happy with the government here, saying, let's be clear, it's gone rogue here. But also RJ saying that if we don't have another outbreak, lockdown, and mail-in ballot election, we have massacre in November for the Dems. Otherwise, Operation Lockstep says it all here. I mean, we're already seeing Texas-wise anyway. I mean, it's hard to get your arms around all of the different state laws, but Texas, SB 1, the law that came into place that is seeing restrictions here, definitely a lot of impacts. Most of the impacts seeming to happen with, mail-in voting. So be surprised to see how that affects us here. But Barbara Carrasco in reference there, it's not a one-issue voter anymore. It's gas, food, illegal immigration, inflation, mandates, parents as terrorists, CRT in schools, sex education for kindergartners, et cetera, et cetera. The list continues, spying on citizens, weaponizing FBI, et cetera. Again, that's what I'm saying, that we are already seeing a trajectory here, because a lot of people just not happy with this administration and the warmed over policies of the, Obama administration, plus a little bit of can't we all get along? I mean, that's a very short way to describe it here. But so again, I'm saying for people you're seeing that are like ticked off about this current issue in Title 42 and such, sure, there are going to be some people that this will be the straw that breaks the back. But I'm also a common problem that we see when it comes to, political discourse is the idea that, you don't like what's happening right now, so now you have to agree with me. I mean, this happens literally across all sides of the aisle here, and it rarely actually works out that way. That's just my little bit of caution when you're saying, welcome to the fold, and now you're with us, that if they're already ticked off about this, that doesn't guarantee that they're going to continue agreeing with a standpoint down the line here. If anything that is proven in politics in this country has been that the enemy of my enemy is not necessarily my friend. that's just how it comes out here. But more commentary we can do on that. Let's get back to those phone lines now. Again, the number to call 915-544-5876. 915-544-KTSM. We do have Joe on the east side here with us right now. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Joe on the west side. How's it going, Andrew?
Oh, west side. Sorry. Sorry there, Joe. Doing all right. How are you?
Basically, I used to be a school counselor and special ed teacher in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And my last school where I was stationed at for 13 years. And Houston has much different situation than El Paso. El Paso is one of the safest cities in America because basically we're not a sanctuary city and we don't have the legal immigration problem. But I worked for Pasadena ISD, which is by the petrochemical plants, and extends all the way out to where Hobby Airport's at. And my school was called Taco Town. It's the city of South Houston, right across Interstate 45 from Hobby Airport. And I would say our population, the school is around 680 to 720 kids a year. And out of that population, over 80% of the parents were illegal immigrants. And nobody accesses that cost to society. And my first wife, who I was married to in Houston, was an illegal immigrant. And she had a few nephews that came over here, via coyotes. And, one of her nephews actually moved to Miami right away after staying with us for a while. And I went to go visit him in Miami, and he had a car that was literally just polluting with black smoke. The inspection sticker was like 10 years old. And I'm like, Julio, man, you can't be driving this. You're going to get pulled over. You have no insurance. You have nothing. He basically just told me, Tio, this is a sanctuary city. The cops aren't going to do anything. I've been pulled over twice already. So basically, not only do they not have to pay taxes, but they fly under the radar, and they're not responsible for things such as, having inspection stickers, having insurance on their cars, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the legal immigrants I know, they're loyal to their country. So this system could be fixed right away if we got out of the government, if they wanted to. The Democrat Party is funded by George Soros and the teachers unions, and George Soros is for the breaking down of America. We all know that. He's on public record saying he wants to destroy America before he dies. And his Open Borders Foundations and other groups, they help fund all this illegal immigration going on. But we want to solve the problem. We could take the money out of the coyotes' hands, and we could have a credit card company like American Express or Visa just process people, give them a pass to work here, pay them $1,000 processing fee, and come here and legally pay taxes and legally work. Because most of them don't want to be American citizens. They want to come here and work. And right now, our government's getting nothing out of it, and we, the taxpayers, are funding all this illegal immigration. And, that's just my 2 cents worth. But if you continue to vote Democrat, if you continue to vote for Rhino Republicans, because, Bush and McCarthy and all these guys, they say they're against illegal immigration, but they're not going to do anything about it either. But basically, our front door is wide open, and we have no sovereignty for our nation. And until we get rid of these politicians, nothing's going to change.
I mean, yeah, voting is something I will always be in support of, and people being aware of it, knowing the issues here. It's interesting that you bring up the idea of essentially what you're referring to there in your idea of the processing, essentially a more robust worker program. The idea of the people who want to come here, do work, and not necessarily be permanent here, or that kind of a thing, as something that other countries have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they commit a felony or DWI or something, then they're automatically deported, but they're not flying under the radar. It's not fair that, I paid $27,000 in taxes last year. None of them paying my taxes if I'm getting services for it. But, last time I went to go see my dad in Houston, I arrived late, so I stayed in the hotel, a Comfort Suites there near the Galleria, and the whole second and third floor of the hotel was illegal immigrants. And I talked to the hotel guest. I'm like, why is the room so cheap here? Because usually a Comfort Suites, on Travelocity is like between $99 and $139 a night. I paid $50 in a nice area. He goes, because I'm charging the government $300 a night for room for all these undocumented people. And the next morning for breakfast, sure enough, everybody down there was undocumented. They had free cell phones, and they had a bus that was taking them off to the airport where they're going to fly to Lord knows where, but it's all on my tax dollars. And like I said, I don't mind paying my taxes for my country, but not when we're supporting things that are illegal. The whole point of the government is to provide safety, protect our sovereignty, and school, fire, police, et cetera, et cetera. They're dropping the ball on their main purpose.
I mean,
they're purposely doing it. And anybody that votes Democrat is guilty. Anybody that votes for a Rhino is guilty. John Cornyn being one of those.
I mean, a lot of commentary happens on some of our elected officials here. I mean, it brings to mind a couple of things here. A lot of talk happens to the, people living in the shadows as being preyed upon, and that certainly happens. People finding themselves in situations where their legal status is disputed as best. I mean, I've known some people who weren't exactly illegal immigrants, but were somewhere in between. They had come here and been legal for a while here, and like the child of someone who was on a permit or something, and then just never finished their paperwork. Like, there are legal gray areas that can happen even outside of this, and that makes them very then susceptible, because like if you can't go to the police for fear of enforcement, then this makes the people who then want to do illegal things to you that much more prevalent. It's a problem in its own right, but you're talking more about the eye of the if you're then turning a blind eye to that as part of it. I mean, people living in the shadows of law and government is almost never a good thing, and this just highlights the other aspect of it. But again, on what you're talking about, the idea of a more robust worker program is an interesting concept, because other countries have grappled with this. One that comes to most of mind is actually Germany. They imported, I mean, it's so much, they've had so much workers coming from the Middle East, Turkey particularly, that doner kebab, which is a Turkish dish, is now considered one of the national dishes of Germany. You see it on every street corner, and most people end up doing that as drunk food there, but it's firmly like Turkish and that region of the world in origin. And yet they had a similar kind of program, the idea of, okay, you can come, you can work here, and then you're expected to leave. But then they had to grapple with the issue of the people who then were like, no, my life, my work is here. I ended up moving my family here. I don't want to leave. And so how they grapple with that. So it is a possible solution the way you're talking about it, but the further effects that come along with that are also, well, let's just say pretty robust here. We're due for that next break right now, so I thank you for the point in the call. You have a good one there. So more to get to here, more that we'll have to talk about. Again, the way we're doing it right now is leaving a whole lot of issues that are, well, I'm unsatisfied with when it comes to the way we're talking about the enforcement. But we'll have to get into more of that here in this next break. After the next break, we'll get to more calls in the line as such. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, this is Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is preparing for the end of the Title 42 policy at the U.S.-Mexico border. The CDC confirms it will lift the public health order known as Title 42, which had restricted migrants from entering the United States through land borders. The assumption at the time was migrants had a greater chance of being COVID-19 positive as they were seeking asylum. The decision to end Title 42 as a public health order comes from the CDC's director, Rochelle Walensky. Walensky believes there are tools available to fight the virus, including COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutics. Additionally, more than 95% of the U.S. population lives in a low COVID-19 community level like El Paso. Therefore, the public health risk is not as grave as before. The Department of Homeland Security is expected to end the policy on May 23rd. In the meantime, DHS will begin programs to vaccinate migrants against COVID-19. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound at Copia Street, a crash is blocking the left shoulder there. Stay right. I-10 eastbound at Airway, an accident's reported at the Airway exit ramp. Another stalled vehicle blocking the left shoulder. I-10 eastbound at the 54 Patriot. And a crash towards downtown Yandell Drive west of Cotton at Lee Street. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
In Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We start off our work week looking really nice, but we end up with another wind maker coming in to kick off our Tuesday and Wednesday, even bringing some strong enough winds on Tuesday for some patchy blowing dust and some slightly cooler temperatures. But don't get too comfy with those cooler temperatures. We're back in the 80s by the weekend.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples Print and Marketing Services help small business print big with wide format signs and banners. Right now, get $10 off custom printed signs, banners, and posters when you spend $50 or more. Offer ends 5/28. Visit staples.com/signage for details. This is your sign to print big at Staples.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
If you're 45 or older, this message could save your life. Health experts now recommend starting regular colorectal cancer screening at age 45. Colorectal cancer is the leading cause of cancer death, but it's preventable through regular screening. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. You've got the guts to prevent colorectal cancer. Talk to your doctor about your options and visit cdc.gov/screenforlife for more information.
No one should read your personal messages. That's why WhatsApp uses end-to-end encryption. It protects whatever you send before, during, and after you send it. So no one, not even WhatsApp, can read your messages. Always message privately. WhatsApp. This report is sponsored by WhatsApp.
Text and whatever. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Not on my watch, our military service members say, as they volunteer to serve. As they move out, stand firm, and take fire. So not on our watch, we say, to the severely ill or injured veterans who can't get the care they deserve to live full and independent lives, even when there's no government funding or a nursing home seems like the only option. We won't leave one warrior behind. Not on our watch. Join us at findwwp.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. All of those are to say that you can get at us a bunch of ways, see the show, tune in, be better informed about what's going on, some major issues in our region, but also chime in if you want to, as we have our RJ, Barbara Carrasco, John Browston, Jay Visconti, Maria Kalman, Flaco Jimenez doing more along those lines. I like the interaction that comes with it. So if you want to drop a comment over there and can do so safely, thanks for doing so. A couple of things I wanted to get to before we get back to the phone lines here. Again, you can also get at us that way. The number to call there, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Actually, one of our previous callers mentioned that was looking like it's being reported by our news partners over at KFOX 14 as a brush fire in the Upper Valley near Donovan and Crossroads. El Paso Fire Department saying a Condition 3 brush fire, meaning medium seriousness here. And again, more than a couple of units, I think, going out there, if I remember my terminology correctly. No injuries reported at this time, but yeah, Donovan and Crossroads here. So, I mean, just be careful if you're going around that area. Some plumes of smoke coming out of there. Don't have any windows here in the studio, so I can't really see what they look like at the moment, but just careful as you're heading around there. One other thing I wanted to mention before we get hit those phone lines is that we are coming up on the actual final map selections for the City of El Paso redistricting. It's actually going to be announced, City Council will be hearing the final selections on April 11th, so within the next week or so here. They will be going into that changing after the, census has really changed how some districts are needing to be done at some of the core districts of town, such as District 8, 2, 3, and 7, and even 6 on along the I-10 corridor near Northeast or Central El Paso, I should say. Needing to get a little bit of a changing out of there because they're below what the deviation rate needs to be because some of the outskirts have grown so much for the city of El Paso. So those maps and those implications coming up here soon, and who that means you're going to be able to vote for in this upcoming, because we do have a few city council seats also going to be coming up here in November. Just haven't had in the primary, of course, because, these are nonpartisan, even if partisan people definitely are still involved here. But comments also coming in. Barbara Carrasco mentioning one other thing that's kind of in the back of my mind, that Elon Musk, now the owner, the largest shareholder of Twitter, changes in the air. We'll see. He has had some demands or implications he has made about the need for free speech, whether or not that actually happens. I mean, he owns like 9% now, so he is majority, but he doesn't own a controlling stake, I guess is the line I look at here. And sure, there are some things Elon Musk does that I like. There are some things I do that I scratch my head at. I don't think that we can really rely on anyone coming in to save us when it comes to some of these issues here, which is why we'll keep talking about them. So to that end, we're getting back to the phone lines. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have a Jerry on the northwest side here with us right now. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for letting me speak my piece.
Sure thing.
I got some rhetorical questions for everybody out there. What does an old drug dealer do that used to deal in pot, but now their state went to selling pot legally? So he's got a few options. First, he can go on welfare, but they're going to ask him, well, what was your past job? And I'm sure he's not going to write down I was a drug dealer, okay, when he tries to get welfare. Second, he can get him a regular job, like the rest of us out here. And most of them can't even pass the drug test to get a regular job. Or third, he can change his product. And when you come to changing the product, that means that you're going to go to a different product, like fentanyl or like crack or whatever, which leads me to the gain of fentanyl deaths between 2021 and 2020. Let's see, what years was that? 2019 and 2021.
Okay.
It doubled. Doubled. It went from 32,000 to 34,000 in those 2 years. Most of it coming across the U.S.-Mexican border from the south. So that leads me to the immigration issue. Okay.
Yep.
When people are coming across the border, I heard earlier today that the drug cartels are ramping up their production of such things as cocaine and methamphetamine and stuff like that in preparation for the 23rd of May this year, whenever they end the 42 project, whatever it is. Okay.
Right.
And my third question or issue on this is the gas that they're going to take out from the petroleum oil reserves, at 1 million barrels of oil.
Right.
Okay, we pay for that to go in. The United States taxpayers pay for that to go into the strategic oil reserves. Okay, they're going to take it out. They're going to give it to the oil companies. Oil companies are going to refine it, and then they're going to sell it to us again.
Correct.
Then they're going to replenish that oil they just took out with oil that's at today's market value. So that seems like it's something like shooting yourself in the foot, isn't it?
It's kind of taking something that's supposed to be kept because, I mean, among other things, you can't have a strategic gasoline reserve because gasoline goes bad before, well, it doesn't keep for years and years. So, yeah, it has to be kept as oil. Right. So I won't begrudge the refineries for, taking their, services being charged for here. But, yeah, we are looking at having to pay more in the long run. But, I mean, the amount of political pressure that is coming out about the prices at the pump here, I'm not surprised that this is the tactic being taken by the administration, but you're right about the back end of this. We are going to be, well, I don't want to say taking it there, but it feels close to it.
Yeah, we are going to get it in the shorts. And the whole thing is, it is a political thing. What is the emergency as far as us being attacked, us being on a war footing for them to take it out of the strategic oil reserves? Where does that come in at? Just because the gas prices are high? I don't see it.
I mean,
don't see it.
The emergency, I can tell you right now, is that we're on the side of approaching the midterm elections, and that is what's driving this. Yeah,
that's the war emergency. Okay, that's the war emergency. So basically, we declared war on half the United States, its own citizens. Well, thank you, Andrew, for letting me understand all this.
Sure thing. Thank you for the
day, sir.
Sure thing here. The one thing I will say about the your theoretical situation of an old retired or wanting to be retired drug dealer, I guess, where they go to, I fully expect that they would probably stay in pot because smuggling and avoiding the revenuers is that's happened a long time in the U.S. I mean, people still do smuggling of cigarettes. So, I mean, I guess I take your point that some will probably move on to what they see as maybe greener pastures. I'm not sure if anyone's actually out there just straight selling fentanyl. The problem is, of course, fentanyl contamination of things, because sure, you want to be offering a product with more kick but less cost. Just mix in a little of the spicy dust there, and it's not my problem that people dies. I mean, there's a lot of bad people out there doing bad things, and I don't think that they'll stop, but I do think that's just avoiding taxes, because sure, that $3-5 million that was made over this past weekend in sales, that's a lot of taxes also going to be coming out of that, and there's still probably more than a couple of people thinking, well, screw that, I'm still going to keep selling and not paying taxes, amongst other things here. Barbara Carrasco saying that experts say it's impossible to pump 1 million barrels per day. I mean, they're going to be infusing it, and I don't even think we're at that level of reserve here. So I think it'll be starting to be released and then processed through. So we'll see. Again, the emergency is very clearly the fact that, well, we're in midterm election season. Let's squeeze in one more call here before we hit this next break. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Yeah, hi, Andrew. This is Mary from the West Side. How are you today?
Doing all right, Mary. What's on your mind?
And I heard you say we have a short segment, so I'll try to be brief. The issue I'm calling about, and what's dear to my heart right now, is this nomination for the Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
That I'm not sure. I'm sure you're aware, and our audience is aware that the Judicial Committee voted today, and it was a tie.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Democrats voted yes, the Republicans voted no. But my understanding now is that since it was a tie, they now have the ability or the opportunity to invoke a judicial, some type of vote on the 7th, which is this coming Thursday. They can invoke the Rule 26, where they can stop or block this election. And my understanding, and maybe I didn't understand it correctly, is if these 11 senators that voted no do not show up to that final hearing, then they have the opportunity of invoking this Rule 26, and possibly that would mean that Senator Schumer would have to discharge the nomination, and they might have to start over again, which in this case I think would be a fantastic, if anything, even if we get a Democrat in that seat, because it is, we do have Joe Biden in the office. But my objection is to this particular judge because of her stance on child pornography, pedophilia, how soft she's been on her rulings. And there's a long, 8 cases that they kept citing in the committee last week. So it's not like you can say it's made up or we're delusional, it's fake news. No, there's actually 8 cases where they cited, and she, where she was really soft on these decisions. And the other thing I want to say is how funny that Michael Vick got put in prison when he got caught abusing dogs for fighting dogs, but yet, and basically it ruined his career, because after he got out, he tried to come back, but there was no coming back. And how come this lady, like I said, she's soft on child pornography and pedophilia, these offenders, and yet what's her reward? She gets to become a Supreme Court justice on the Supreme Court. And I just want to say to our audience out there, this is not about being a Democrat or being a Republican, because I know Raul's out there bouncing his head off the wall right now. It's not about being a Democrat or a Republican. It's about doing the right moral thing and standing up in defense of these poor children that don't have anybody to speak up for them. And the one person that had an opportunity, this judge, and she goes soft on these people, and she lets them out with 3 months of, the sentence is 3 months. This guy, Hawkins, she gave him only 3 months. He's an 18-year-old man with thousands of pictures on his website, on his computer, and she chose to just empathize with him. She apologized that she even had to sentence him to anything, and then she gives him 3 months, and then she told the committee, well, I usually order them to be monitored on their computer usage so that they don't offend again. Well, she let this guy out. She didn't put any order in place for his computer usage to be monitored. And there was a report that came out over the weekend where this guy that she also prosecuted by the last name of Meeks, she gave him a soft sentence. He got out of jail. And he himself is saying, I offended again, because these people, this is a mental thing. They're, you know.
Oh, yeah. No disagreement there on the idea that there are serious mental problems involving anyone. I mean, as much hemming and hawing there's about specific laws in other parts of the country here about the way we're dealing with, sexuality, kids, all of these issues here. It comes down real simply to it that whatever you're thinking about, because, spare thoughts happen and people think weird things when in, their private spaces. But when you start acting on them, that's what I care about. And if you're acting on them and doing these things, yeah, you deserve the full force of law being thrown at you here. And I know that's been a major part of the whole hearings involving this confirmation. Did find a reference to what you're talking about there that, there is the Senate Rule 26, which requires that a majority of members physically present report the bill out of committee. So that could be potentially one here. I had heard about it, hadn't looked it up as much. I'll have to look a little bit further into that here. But all other things being equal, fully expect this to move forward out of this vote and go into then confirmation into office. They're trying to do that ahead of the Easter weekend here. So you're right about that vote being sent here. I know that's been the major part of the questioning going on for this judicial candidate here. And it does raise reasonable questions. I just kind of expect at this point that it will probably move forward unless something like this kind of a tactic actually works out, given the current makeup of the Senate, and which, again, just as a subtle chiding justification here, this is why elections matter here. So we got to take that next break now. I do appreciate the point and the call. We'll squeeze in what we can out of this last segment here. Again, you are tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Coming back, we'll close out the show, squeeze in what we can. Got at least £1 250 call we got to get to and such. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Copia Street, a crash is blocking the left shoulder there. Stay right. I-10 eastbound at Airway, an accident's reported at the Airway exit ramp. Another stalled vehicle blocking the left shoulder. I-10 eastbound at the 54 Patriot, and a crash towards downtown Yandell Drive west of Cotton at Lee Street. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Brake Masters.
Before your day is done, Brake Masters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Brake Masters shape. Download coupons at BrakeMasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Brake Masters. We give you an honest break.
The True Crime Podcast, What Happened to Sandy Beale, investigates the alarming death of a young woman who dreamed of a career in law enforcement. Journalist Melissa Jeltsin untangles the mystery at the heart of the investigation, revealing a troubling pattern by officials close to the case.
I didn't take any of that crap because I could tell that they were hiding something.
Listen to What Happened to Sandy Beale on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey folks, this is Andrew J. Polk, and I love supporting local and experiencing all the world has to offer, which is why I love Enhanced Flavors, your local source of over 40 quality flavored olive oils and balsamic vinegars. You don't have to scour the globe or even leave home to taste all that's offered in extra virgin olive oil and great flavored varieties from Italy, Greece, Spain, and Tunisia, and certified balsamic vinegar straight from the Modena province of Italy. Look for Enhanced Flavors at your favorite farmers markets to spice up your life, or find them online at enhancedflavors.com.
Susan, it's so great to finally be able to get together again.
Oh, it sure is. And I really appreciate you picking up the bill.
I'm happy to. I've got the extra cash. Since we've all been driving so much more again, I've been using Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, I get real cash back every time I buy gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make $200 to $300 this year.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code FUN for 25 cents a gallon or more cash back on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code FUN to earn 25 cents a gallon or more on your first tank. That's code FUN.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Rounding the bend, the last segment of the show here. A couple of things to tell you about what we got coming up here, particularly for you this week. Going to be talking further with Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. tomorrow about some of their stories and work going on those things, including, if you see the issue out this week here, there's a lot of, developments going on around town, but also things like IRS backlogs, new tech innovation hubs, that convention we were talking about, the cannabis laws, but a whole lot more. So we'll get into all of that here, or as much as we can anyway, in our interviews here. Plus, we got more talking about, the great resignation going on, impacts on states, plus those, real estate concerns and how we're seeing the issues happen here in El Paso. So a lot coming up for you this week that we're still working on here. A lot of comments coming in here as well, but let's squeeze in at least one last call if we can here before we end the program here. We do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, Title 42.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. How is it that the CDC makes this decision to rescind Title 42 when we're still required to adhere to certain protocols, such as boarding aircraft, the use of masks on that?
I mean, the short answer is that these are separate federal agencies considering it. And the fact that it's gotten, it never should have been to this level. Frankly, I think that there's also a failure of Congress happening there. Just add it to the pile of failures going on there, because really there should have been a law passed, because we're still in this circumstance that has been, frankly, I remember back to the second Bush administration being called about, too much overreach of executive power, where it's just expected that we've got these, federal executive branch government issues and mandates out there that there is almost no then law backing for. It's just their policies here. So we're, in simple terms, I know this is unsatisfying, we're talking about CDC versus the FAA making these determinations here as to how we're still under restrictions, but also we're not seeing then anything else supporting coming along with it out of Congress to then say, no, here's the actual full law and policy we're going to put into place. It's just out of these agencies.
Right. One last point.
Mm-hmm.
The county of El Paso is considering spending $3 million for an artworks project in Escalante Park.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I know time is short.
We'll squeeze in what we can here. I do appreciate the point in the call. We'll have to get to more of this in future days here, because there's so much more. You had told me that 2 hours was not going to be enough to get to everything we need to talk about in a day. 2 years ago, I would have just said, come on, that's so much time. And then, well, here we are today here. I think we got just one quick note here. Nate, if you got a quick thought here, we can squeeze it in.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the time. God bless you all. I just wanted to say what I'm reminded of now is we're living in such a turbulent time. Let's just all look at why we have rules and guidelines is to keep things within a certain framework, and we're going to continue to be blessed and endure these hardships. Let's look at the rules and the guidelines that we are to live by. I'll close with that. Okay. Thank you, Andrew, for your time.
Oh, absolutely appreciate it here. Sorry that we're in short timing it here at the end of the segment here, but I will say that again, as you often bring up, personal responsibility is very important, and also just take care of you and yours. There's a whole lot going on here. We talk about serious subjects here, sometimes with a lighter bent to it, but really, there's a lot going on here, and just take care of you and yours, because no one else, I've said it throughout the pandemic and even before, no one else is going to take care of you like you are going to take care of yourself. So always just keep that in mind. Do what's right for you and your family, because that's what it really comes down to. And hopefully, by us all doing the right thing for ourselves and for our families, and largely for society as a whole, I am confident that at least this community can make it through it. If outside forces act on us, we'll just have to respond in kind, as we always do. We're going to have to leave it there for the day, because we are super out of time for this show. I want to thank everyone who did call in, comment, participate in the show. Y'all are really what helped make this what it is, and our mission to continue discussing about the issues that affect us here in the borderland. So stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening all. We'll see you all tomorrow.
News Radio 690.
Got a closure to tell you about. Donovan Drive, both north and southbound at North Mesa Street, is closed due to a fire emergency. Your alternates there could be the I-10 or to the West Montoya Drive. On the 10 eastbound at Copia, an accident is blocking the left shoulder. I-10 eastbound at Airway, an accident reported there. Gateway Boulevard, northbound at Dyer, disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
With so many real estate agents to choose from, how do you find the best one? Hi, it's Glenn Beck. One key is just looking for the investment that an agent is willing to make to get your home sold. Brian Birds with eXp Realty and his team have a marketing budget 25 times higher than the average agent's annual income. This means your home gets maximum exposure because it's marketed to the widest possible audience and gets you the highest possible sales price. Brian is so confident in his ability to sell your home fast and for more money that he's willing to put his own money on the line. If your home doesn't sell at the price and deadline you agreed to, he'll buy it from you himself. You're not going to find another real estate agent in El Paso who is that invested in getting your home sold. He's the only one I'd call. Google Brian Birds. That's Brian, B-U-R-D-S. Read over 400 five-star reviews because I'm not the only one who knows you should call Brian Birds. Google Brian Birds or just check out brianbirds.com.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Stay informed at KTSMradio.com.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online at KTSMradio.com. News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Republican Senator Mitt Romney will vote to confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court nomination. Alaska Republican Lisa Murkowski also announced that she will be supporting Jackson. That means 3 GOP senators have now stated they will back Jackson, becoming the first Black woman to sit on the Supreme Court. An arrest has been made in connection to Sunday's mass shooting in Sacramento that left 6 people dead. Police Chief Kathy Lester tells KCRA 26-year-old Dondre Martin was taken into custody on charge of assault with a firearm and other charges. Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg took a moment to address the shooting during a statewide mental health forum.
The terrible events in Sacramento may or may not be directly related to mental health. After all, nothing justifies people picking up weapons of mass destruction and killing and injuring people.
A North Miami Beach condo complex is being ordered to be evacuated after being found structurally unsafe. Another North Miami Beach condo, Crestview Towers, was evacuated after it was found to be unsafe last year. The increased scrutiny began after a complex collapsed in nearby Surfside, killing nearly 100 people last June. The White House is doing its first risk assessment on the impact of climate change on the federal budget.
The Office of Management and Budget calls the fiscal risks of climate change immense, estimating that climate change could cost $2 trillion per year by the end of the 21st century. The OMB says current climate change trends suggest a 3 to 10% drop in GDP by that time. I'm Lisa Taylor.
New data shows 2021 was the worst year for road rage-related shootings. In a report from Everytown for gun safety, 391 people were injured while 131 were killed. The new figures are double the pre-pandemic numbers. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. New York City is launching billboard ads in Florida to show opposition to Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay bill. Scott Pringle reports.
The ads will be in 5 big Florida cities and run over an 8-week period. Mayor Eric Adams says New York shows support for the LGBTQ plus community and is hoping to convince some Florida residents to pack their bags for New York.
We are in unison with you and your right to have self-identification, your right to be live the lifestyle and live the lives that you choose.
The Florida bill bans instruction on gender identity and sexual orientation in K through 3rd grade. Supporters argue it should be up to the parents to teach the topic, but critics like Mayor Adams say it attacks the LGBTQ plus community.
Ford says the global shortage of semiconductor chips is largely to blame for a 17% drop in first quarter sales. Company officials noted sales of Ford's trucks were down 23%, and car sales were off nearly 50% during the first quarter. However, Ford's popular F-Series pickups had a record 50,000 new retail orders last month.